So Shabbat Shalom, Shana Tova. So nice to see you all. I kind of see you. I imagine that you are there, but it's nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. Welcome to Western Synagogue. So a few days ago, we celebrated our 10th anniversary here in town. On September 3rd, 2013, we arrived in Nashville after waiting several months for our visas to be approved and our passports to be stamped. That day was a Tuesday. We landed very early that Tuesday morning, but as some of you may recall, we really didn't have much time to relax. Rosh Hashanah began just the day after on Wednesday evening. Now, drawing inspiration from the Unetane Tokef, I spent the past few weeks delving into the Sefer HaZichronot, the book of memories, in order to review some of the major events that took place back in 2013. So among other things, 2013 was the year of the Boston Marathon bombing, the significant target security breach, and the NSA leaks. Do you remember? It was also the year when Pope Benedictus XVI became the first pope in a gazillion years to retire, and Pope Francis, also known as the Pope with the greatest accent ever, was elected the head of the Catholic Church. On 2013, the Oxford Dictionary's word for the year was selfie. Isn't that cute? 2013 was the year when Apple released the iPhones 5C and 5S. Anybody has any of those? And Breaking Bad received the Emmy Award for Outstanding Drama Series. Those were the days. Now, according to the Unetane Tokef, the reason God reads from the Book of Memories is to decide what to do with us. The underlying concept behind this idea is that in order to talk about the future, first, we need to engage in a mindful revision of our past. If Rosh Hashanah is also Yom HaDin, the day of judgment, then it makes sense to stop for a minute and ask ourselves a couple of very important questions, such as, are we in a better place compared to where we were 10 years ago? Has America made progress in the right direction? What about Israel? Can we state with absolute certainty that the world has improved in the last decade? I'll be honest with you. Despite the collective challenges that we all had to endure during the pandemic, I must admit that the last decade has brought me some of the most wonderful moments in my life. For example, this past December, Argentina won the World Cup. And now we have a Brazilian rabbi. It's the best thing ever. Okay? I don't know for how long it's going to last, but right now, we won the World Cup. Now, in 2018, my hometown team, the one from Argentina, not national teams, my team, won the most important game in the history of soccer. Rabbi Gustavo shares the same team with me. Soccer actually died that day. And we saw it this past decade. And on top of all that, only a few weeks ago, I had the privilege of witnessing Messi playing here in Nashville. What can I say? It's like, in this particular department, I feel very blessed. And yet, setting those bright moments aside, I think that today is a good time to look at the bigger picture and see what the past decade has bestowed upon all of us. So, for example, during the last 10 years, the United States saw the leadership of its first African-American president, only to be succeeded by a president who was proudly endorsed and embraced by white supremacist groups all across the nation. In the last 10 days, the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples have the right to marry, but also overturned the constitutional right to abortion, effectively denying women the ability to decide over their own bodies, health, and reproductive choices. In the last few years, Israel went from having its most pluralistic coalition ever to the rise of the most ultra-nationalistic, ultra-religious, and far-right government in its history. In the midst of all this balagan, which is Hebrew for balagan, Israel endured 5 consecutive elections and yet somehow managed to forge peace with Bahrain, the UAE, with Sudan, and with Morocco. Nevertheless, the pursuit of peace with the Palestinians has remained elusive, and the efforts to demonize Israel, particularly in academic and liberal circles, both here and abroad, have significantly increased. So are we in a better place? In a distinctively Jewish manner, we could say it depends. There are numerous reasons for us to feel proud, but also plenty of stuff to make us worry. I guess that nobody will be surprised if I say that this past decade has shown us that progress doesn't follow a straightforward path. So think about these things. Technology has reached unprecedented level of advancement, but social media has heightened the levels of anxiety and depression, especially among our youth. It has never been so easy to be in touch with family and friends, and yet people are feeling lonelier than ever before. Overall, our collective wealth has reached unparalleled magnitudes. However, we don't have to drive for too long to realize that hunger, poverty, and homelessness continue to persist in every corner of the world. In the United States, we boast the largest defense budget on earth, but paradoxically, we are constantly under attack because we have the highest number of mass shootings in the world, by far. Just in 2023, this year, the total of gun violence as a whole has already resulted in over 25,000 victims, with 1,000 children and teenagers among them. And it's a shanda, you know. We proudly uphold the world's oldest democracy, but the rise of identity politics and the escalating polarization among those advocating for the extremes have put that same democracy in a very fragile place. As Jews, we are probably the most well-educated Jewish generation in history. And despite that, many congregations are witnessing a drop in their numbers, and rabbinical seminaries of every denomination are struggling because young, promising students don't want to become rabbis anymore. It has never been so cool, hip, or trendy to be Jewish in America. However, the number of anti-Semitic events in the US is going up, while the representation of Jews in prestigious schools and other cultural establishments all across the country is going down. We feel at home here in America. America is home to all of us. But the growing insecurity we feel is hard to ignore. The need for ongoing funds to bolster the security of our institutions is a vivid example of the real threats that have taken root in recent years. And as you can see, I could go on and on and on for quite some time, sharing with y'all the ups and downs of this past decade. But you get the point, right? Now, the good thing about dedicating time to review our recent past lies in its ability to give us a bit of perspective. This way, we get to identify some of our bright spots while bringing back to memory those things that didn't go as planned. It is also a very humbling exercise because it reminds us that life is always complex and discourages us from engaging in an all or nothing type of approach. If this past decade has taught us anything at all, that is the cautionary tale regarding those who are persistently looking to polarize us. So as we gaze into the future, it is safe to assume that the next decade will have a mix of everything. Some good, some bad, some inspiring, and some disappointing. However, if we truly want the next decade to be better than the last one, especially in what relates to Medinat Israel, to our Jewish lives, and to the state of our union, then let me share with you what I consider to be 3 important pieces of advice on this first of Rosh Hashanah. Are you ready? Ready or not, I'm doing it again anyway. Advice number 1, we can't leave Israel in the hands of Israelis alone. Now, don't get me wrong. Israelis are entitled to choose their leaders, and there's neither a way nor a reason for us to intervene there. However, that doesn't mean that we should remain silent when Israel's democracy is at risk. Right now, as some people are withdrawing their financial support to Israel, it is important to remember that Israel is not only its far-right government, but also the thousands of citizens who are taking to the streets each week to protest. Those folks need our support because they embody the aspirational ethos that the state of Israel has always represented, particularly in these times when our love for Israel is tested almost on a daily basis. We are called upon to strengthen our commitment to the Jewish state and to stand with those who are tirelessly fighting for the survival of a resilient democracy. The upcoming years will be crucial. And as the Torah teaches us, we cannot remain indifferent as events unfold. If Israel is to remain the homeland of every Jew on earth, then each and every one of us has a role to play in shaping the type of Judaism that is being created over there. So in that spirit, here's my second piece of advice for you today. The advice number 2, we can't leave Judaism in the hands of the ultra-religious alone. One of the most remarkable recent developments in Israel is the fact that those protesting on the streets have reclaimed the Israeli flag as a symbol of their struggle. For many years, the flag was associated with the most ultra-nationalistic elements of the Israeli society, but that has changed for the better. So while watching the massive number of flags on TV, it occurred to me that within liberal Judaism, we should embark on a very similar process. If we care about how Judaism will look like to our children and grandchildren, we need to begin by reappropriating Jewish symbols, rituals, and practices so that they become an integral part of our own identities. The idea is not to mimic what other groups are doing, but to reclaim some of those mitzvot while infusing them with the kind of meaning that gives our lives a sense of purpose and determination. So, for example, We may not light Shabbat candles with the expectation of ushering in the Mashiach, but we could choose to do so as a way to strengthening our particular identities, especially as we actively engage in the broader world. Similarly, we may not attend Minyan hoping for the Jerusalem temple to be rebuilt, but we may do so to cultivate a meaningful spiritual practice for ourselves or as an opportunity to embrace those in our community who are saying Kaddish for their loved ones. The key takeaway here is that we have the ability to create the type of Judaism that can make us proud. And that, you know what? It's an awesome challenge to have. Now, it's true that none of this will happen overnight, but it is certainly doable, and I truly believe that together we can make it work. And now, let me share my last piece of advice with you today. Advice number 3, we can't leave American politics in the hands of politicians alone, and please, 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 I beg you, we can't leave American politics in the hands of those who are always betting on the extremes. We cannot. As you are well aware, we are entering a highly contested political year, and there is plenty to suggest that it won't be a pleasant spectacle to see. The past decade has showed us the perils of a political discourse that caters to the extremes at the expense of those who find themselves closer to the center. So while politicians are increasingly polarizing their bases, we cannot afford falling into their trap, because that will tear us apart. I'm sure that you have heard stories about families shattered by political differences and about friends who avoid discussing politics to save their relationships. But this is not how things should be. Once upon a time, people could agree to disagree on political matters without feeling like it was the end of the world. And that wasn't such a long time ago. So if we truly want to return to those days, first we need to recognize that we may not have all the answers, and that individuals with different perspectives might have some crucial insights to add to our conversation. Maybe it is about speaking less and listening more. So to make the next decade better than the last one, let us begin by cultivating what the Jewish tradition calls a heart of many rooms, a mindset that makes space for our own voice while respecting those with different viewpoints at the same time. Despite the many individuals who are always looking for ways to divide us, we will be in a much better place the moment we realize that we are all in this together. So according to the Unetane Tokef that we will read in just a moment when we begin Musaf, God is presently reviewing our deeds to determine our final verdict. And yet, the central point of this poem lies in the notion that Shuvah, Tfilah, and Tzedakah have the potential to alter the severity of the decree. In other words, even if our past has more than a few rough spots, the Jewish tradition has always upheld the belief that our future remains open-ended and that our actions have the potential to shift the trajectory created by our prior choices. So with that in mind, I believe that the next 10 years can be better than the last ones. And I believe that our shul can play a significant role in bringing this vision to life, serving as a safe space where we can work together for the greater good. During the next decade, I want our synagogue to be a spiritual home where people can express the critical and yet unwavering support for the state of Israel. At the same time, I want us to redouble our efforts in creating multiple gateways that will allow people from different backgrounds to shape a set of Jewish practices that will inspire them and fill them with pride. As we keep moving forward, I hope that this holy place will become a center from which to engage in solving some of the political challenges ahead without playing into the hands of those who seek to divide us. Above all, and based on what our sages have taught us throughout the generations, today I want to tell you that I have faith in our ability to affect change. I believe that our actions matter, and I am confident that collectively we will take the necessary steps so that 10 years from now, we will be able to reflect upon our past with the kind of smile that is reserved only for those moments when we realize that we have not just fulfilled our obligations, but have gone beyond our most precious dreams and aspirations. I'm sure that we can do it, and I hope that you will join me in making that happen. As we begin with this new chapter of our lives, may God bless you and your dear ones with a year that is both enriching and meaningful, brimming with joy, with health, and with love. Shabbat Shalom, Shana Tova.